Hello and welcome, travelers, to part 2 of the Teyvat Travel Guide series. In this video, we'll be covering characters, but first I'd like to cover a little about exploration, since I think it's important for you to know. Dragonspine is a big scary place for a lot of people, the primary reason behind this being the environmental mechanic that is applied to you while you're in Dragonspine. The cold mechanic at the bottom of your screen while in Dragonspine fills over time, and when it is full, you start to take damage. The effect is amplified when wet, but surprisingly, it's far easier to explore at lower levels because, in general, the enemies have far fewer hit points, meaning you don't have to stand out in the cold as long. In higher world ranks, where enemies have more hit points, you may find yourself in much longer fights in Dragonspine, meaning the environmental damage has a chance to quickly take a toll on you, rendering you easy to knock out by the mobs or to simply freeze to death. The best possible advice I can give is to use the interactive map at a low AR and collect enough Crimson Agates to reach level 8 in the Frostbearing Tree prior to leveling beyond AR 35. The Crimson Agates are the red things I'm picking up on the screen right now. They actually appear on your map when you're near one. Doing this will unlock the Crimson Wish weekly mission for you. The Crimson Wish weekly missions will provide 5 Crimson Agates to you each week until you max out the Frostbearing Tree. This area will only get harder to deal with the higher you level, so even if you're forced to run from some of the enemies, you're better off getting the Crimson Agates. These will let you level the tree on Dragonspine, and provide you with a lot of rewards, including a new catalyst to forge and likely your first crown for character talents. Pro tip, if you're dying from the cold and can't find a fire, if there is a barrel or a box nearby, you can light this for a quick fix until you find another fire from a torch or cooking stand. To explore Dragonspine, you absolutely must have a fire character in the party. Make sure you have one, even if it's Amber. The level of the character is insignificant, you simply need a lighter. Before you start leveling the Traveler, there is a bit of information you should know. When switching elements on the Traveler, all of the talents are set to level 1, so if you're interested in a new element of the Traveler, you will have to level the talents separately per element. You'll get electricity when you're stronger, but in the beginning you only have access to wind or earth. Earth is a potent support for any of the other Earth characters and is used to solve many of the puzzles in Liyue. The Traveler's damage can be boosted pretty high as an Earth character, but without Zhongli or Albedo, you may need him for the Geo Resonance if you're interested in playing Ningguang or Noelle. Air is also a good support and can cause massive damage with the new Elemental Mastery increase. Since there aren't very many Air or Earth characters for you to get in the game as of 2.0, you'll need to choose one of these to obtain a resonance with the other characters of this element. Another thing to note is that if you're free to play, he is likely the only character you will have at Constellation 6 for a long time, meaning you can level his talents far higher than the other characters. Though, that also means you could wait on leveling his talents if you have a different character that you favor. I mentioned in my initial video that he is the most cost-effective character, and the primary reason behind that is because he doesn't cost any resin to ascend outside of the Mora and books. You get the crystals for him based off adventure rank, so you'll never have to fight a boss to level him. To be effective in the beginning, you should favor one element over the other. I want to make this very clear before I start talking about which characters not to level. Every character in Genshin Impact can be effective and do good damage in the endgame, but some require far more resources to get to this stage than others. As far as resources go in the beginning, don't worry about characters leveling off of being in the party. This is pretty insignificant. The thing you don't want to waste is the actual character experience books. Unless you're interested in Amber, Lisa, or Noelle, you probably shouldn't level these 3. Amber is widely regarded as the worst character in the game, mostly because it takes a massive amount of resources to get her to hit decently. Unlike other taunts from different characters, Amber's Baron Bunny cannot apply her element immediately. You are forced to wait until Baron Bunny explodes without Constellations. Baron Bunny is easily ejected from the battlefield, making him an ineffective taunt and his explosions likely to miss. While Amber's ultimate is one of the cheaper ones to cast in the game, her ultimate is also very short and has a small area of effect. This means to use this effectively, you'll need some sort of crowd control, meaning one of the air characters to bunch up the mobs. The Traveler can actually pull Baron Bunny into both of his air abilities. This could be rather effective if you apply a lot of elemental reactions, but there are much easier ways to fight. Amber is an early game trap that can cause you to waste resources since you need her for many of the puzzles initially. You likely do not have another fire character, but do not waste resources on Amber unless you plan to play her for the long haul. You'll be able to receive a different fire character from the Spiral Abyss 3-3. Lisa suffers from slow powers in a fast-paced game, and without a good knowledge of how the elemental reactions work, I cannot recommend her in the beginning due to the high learning curve. She also has to stand still when preparing her big hit, and without more of her constellations, it's just asking to be staggered or worse. While she has some of the highest talent percentages in the game as far as a 4-star goes, it is misleading as to how effective that she can be. Lisa can provide some big damage, but it takes a lot of setup. Another issue with her applies to all Catalyst users, and that is the Catalyst weapons are not easy to get. Though, if you're interested in co-op, Lisa shines brightly, since not every mob will target you and you can get the charged attack to apply stacks of her electrical ability quite easily, making her an effective damager in co-op. She is also a tall character model, which means that it's much easier to dodge with her in general, but unfortunately, the difficulty in acquiring her constellations, similar to Amber or Kaya, combined with her overall playstyle, makes her a weak prospect for your team versus other Catalyst users. Noelle is actually a healer, but her real capabilities are locked behind constellations. If you're lucky and get her first constellation, then I would highly recommend leveling her, since she is very powerful endgame, especially with more constellations. However, if you don't have any constellations on Noelle, her healing is inconsistent and Barbara is a much better option. The first constellation makes her a much more effective healer because she is one of 2 dedicated shield healers. Shielding has recently become very important to survivability in the Spiral Abyss, the Domains, and the newer events. If you have all her constellations or ever get them, she becomes a tremendously powerful damager that can heal your whole party, especially with the player-made White Blind Sword or the Battle Pass Wave Splitter. I currently use her for 4-player co-op events because no one ever picks the healer, and she is extremely tough, making it easy to survive team-wiping attacks. Noelle with Constellations is also one of the easiest characters in the game to build. She is one of 2 characters that are based off defense, the most common stat in the game regardless of artifact set. Speaking of constellations, there are a few things that you should know about them. Typically speaking, the best constellations on any given character are the 4th and 6th constellations. The 3rd and 5th increase the level of your talents by 3 levels permanently. The first 2 constellations vary from character to character on how good they are. If you're a high-spending player, a lot of your power will come from these on the 5-star characters. To lower-spending players or the free-to-play, the 4-star constellations you will get over time playing the game, but the special 5-star constellations are likely out of your reach. The base game 5 stars you will get if you play for an extremely long time. Characters are better than constellations, so be sure to collect as many as you can. In the beginning though, you shouldn't worry too much about these, just use the character you really like. Characters are better than constellations for 2 reasons. The first being that it simply gives you a lot more options. The second being that even if a character isn't leveled, they can still offer some assistance via their utility talent. Some of these aren't very useful, but there are characters that have good ones like Sucrose or Big Chungus. Both of them have talents that can give you extra resources over a long period of time, and it does add up. If you're on the lower spending end of the spectrum, these characters are vital to getting extra resources that you might need. The only time I would say the constellations are better than a character is if you like that character far more than the others. If you're free to play and looking for constellations on a specific character, be sure to pull on the limited character banners that have characters you like on them, since you'll have a better chance of getting them. Deciding which characters to level can be a tall order, especially when you don't have very many to pick from, but there are a few things that you can use to try and help you select the very best characters for starting out. To impart a little knowledge of the future, you will need at least 8 characters to complete the Spiral Abyss, but you won't be able to afford that kind of team for a while. The setup I normally go with and would recommend for each team is 1 DPS, 1 off damage or offensive support, 1 defensive support, and a healer of some kind. In the beginning, you already have 2 of these slots filled for you with the Traveler and Barbara. My recommendation is to select 2 other characters aside from them to level initially, since it'll be all you can really afford regardless of your spending habits. If you want pay to win, however, there are occasionally booster packs in the store you can use to level talents, weapons, or characters faster, so this may not apply to you as much. As I stated in my initial video, you'll need a powerful ice character and the Traveler. Another character I'd highly recommend, despite her being slightly controversial to level, is Barbara, because she is the only character as of 2.0 specifically designed to heal in the game. I think due to their early game experiences that most high-level players dislike Barbara. If you're unfamiliar with the intricacies of the elemental systems in Genshin Impact, Barbara can cause your party to be frozen or even shattered, both of which are extremely negative. Barbara is generally a disliked character among the hardcore players since a lot of the game has ice-related enemies, including the Spiral Abyss, which frequently sports ice-themed floors, meaning she can get you frozen if you're not careful. However, Barbara is actually a fairly potent offensive support, especially for air, electric, or ice characters. This combo is effective against most of the enemies, and the Electro Charge can actually stun smaller enemies to buy you a little time. The reason you're getting frozen is because Barbara is one of the few characters that applies her element to herself when activating her skill. Unfortunately for Barbara, water is very weak against both ice and electricity, meaning that this can backfire in certain situations. You can still use her skill, but keep in mind you are very weak to ice and electric attacks while the ribbon remains around you. Barbara's ultimate is still very effective since it doesn't get you wet. She is also the only 4-star character that currently has a movie play when her ultimate activates, which means that Barbara has a brief moment of invincibility that can let you dodge large-scale attacks. Using Barbara offensively is actually pretty devastating, since her ring auto-applies the wet status to anything it touches, even multiple times. This means you can continue to keep things frozen or electrocharged easily while the ring is around you, making characters like the Traveler, Fischl, and Kaya particularly lethal. With the recent increase in elemental mastery, the combo between the Traveler and Barbara has become even more effective. That'll be all for Part 2. Tune in for Part 3, which will cover elemental reactions, and I'll see you next time.